So glad to have you with us this evening, either in person or via live stream. I'm Allison Jablonski, and I am the provost at the University of Lynchburg. You've joined our university lecture series. This is the third year of this series. As you might imagine, it started when we became the University of Lynchburg after our name change in 2018. We have this evening Dean Nancy Hubbard, who is joining us. She is the Dean of the College of Business here on campus. Nancy earned her Doctor of Philosophy at the University of Oxford in England, her Master's in Science of Human Resource Management, also at Oxford, and a BS in Business Administration at Georgetown University. She is in many, many roles on campus besides leading the College of Business. She is also a faculty athletic representative, working with our students and coaches, and she takes that role into the national limelight as well, working with their national organization. So I'm so excited to have Nancy here with us. She's a great representative of who we're seeking to speak at the University Lecture Series, and that's scholars on campus who are also educators. So Nancy, I'm sure will give us a compelling talk, and I hope that you will join with me in welcoming her tonight.
Thank you, Dean Jablonski. We have determined, because there was nobody in the splash zone here, that I can take off my mask without endangering anybody. We were saying earlier that this is the first time I've had to do a talk and wear grown-up clothes, top and bottom, in 8 months. So I'm really excited. I almost feel like this is normal. And I'm really delighted to be here this evening and see people as well as doing this virtually. Again, it's almost like normal. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is the business of you, and hopefully apply some business concepts that apply to large corporations, but apply them to you as individuals. And maybe this will be a 45 minutes of being able to kind of think about you and the business of you and how some of these concepts apply to you. So I'll be covering 3 different concepts. The first one is core competencies, the second one is personal brand, and the third one is your board of directors. And believe it or not, you already have a board of directors. So to begin with, I'd like you to think about yourself as if you are Google or Apple, because you actually have a lot more similarities with them than you probably realize. You both have assets. For the college students out here, you probably have more debts than you would care to think about. Don't worry, you'll be able to pay them off. You have a purpose, what we would call a mission statement, something, a reason why you exist. At the moment, for college students, you're getting your degree and furthering your education. For those of us who are in higher education, our mission is to help you achieve your goals and life's dreams. You have employees. You have at least one employee, and that is you. Maybe you don't have others, but at this stage, you have you as an employee. You all have stakeholders, and some of you may be saying, what on earth is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is anyone who can be influenced or you influence in a business or in your life. So you all have stakeholders. It's anybody who influences your decisions or anybody who's influenced by your decisions. So it's actually a pretty wide group of people. And you have things that you're really, really good at. You may not even realize you're good at these. They're core competencies. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about. And you also have a brand, a personal brand, again, one of our topics tonight, and you'll have your board of directors. So we're going to concentrate on the last 3. We can talk about the others another time. Come see me in my office hours, happy to talk about it, but we're going to concentrate on those lower ones. So first concept is core competencies. Now, every company has a core competency, and the concept started in the late 80s, early 90s. Just to give you some context, there was a Harvard professor named Michael Porter, and in the mid-80s, he started talking about competitive advantage and how companies should all pile into industries that are really, really attractive. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not, but if that industry is attractive, boy, pile into that industry. And there was kind of a backlash to that. And it was 2 guys named C.K. Prahalad and Gary Hamel, and they said, you know, there's a bit of a problem with this. Maybe making aircraft carriers is really, really attractive, but if you've never made an aircraft carrier and you have no skills in this, it's probably not a good industry to get into. And so it was almost this backlash of saying, what should you be doing? And what you should be doing is looking at things that you are uniquely good at doing, and then positioning those within certain industries that have some kind of synergy. So a core competency is defined as a harmonized combination of multiple resources and skills that distinguish a firm in the marketplace. See, acquisitions and consultants can never say anything clearly. They want to embellish it. Basically, this is figure out what you're good at. But what's interesting about this is they say core competencies are unique. They're really unique to the person, or in this case, the organization. It's a combination, it's very hard to replicate. It'll be based on who the founder is, what is their experience, what time or what era were they founded, what philosophy or culture did they have in the organization. And it's culture, but it's more than culture. It's really culture and a combination of success. And what's interesting is if you find out you have these unusual gifts or abilities in this one area, you can actually transfer those to new industries. But the hard part is figuring out what you're good at in that area because it's really intangible. So they would, CK and Gary Hamel would say it's transferable amongst activities, it's timeless, and it serves for your competitive advantage. It means why you're good at something when other companies are not. So I'm going to give you some examples. Apple. Apple is one that everybody uses. Apple is not a manufacturer. They don't actually make anything. They assemble a few things, but what they are is a design company. They come up beautiful, functional designs. My kids would tell me they're intuitive. I think they're intuitive if you're under 30. If you're over 30, I could hit this thing against a wall and it makes no sense to me. But my kids swear to me that they are intuitive devices. And they're beautiful. And they create things that we don't even know we need. And now we can't live without them. So Apple's a design company. Nike doesn't actually make any clothes. That's another thing people think. They think they manufacture clothes. They don't. That's all outsourced. They're a branding company. And they are probably the most successful branding company in the world. And part of their brand evokes success. And they are really good at finding superb athletes and then nurturing them throughout their career, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, as they reach success and really intertwining the athlete's success with Nike products. Sony. Now, for those of you who are younger, you won't recognize what I'm talking about here, but Sony is really good at taking big stuff and making it little. In the 1970s, people did not jog. Jogging, it hurts, and B, you're bored. So what Sony did is they had this device where they were able to take something about the size of a brick, it weighed about the size of a brick, and put a cassette in it with headphones, and you could go run with this thing, and it wouldn't skip, and you could run. It was called a Sony Walkman. Okay, it revolutionized running because now all of a sudden you could listen to music on a cassette, which you probably don't even know what that is, while you were running, and it changed the way people exercised. It truly did. They took this concept of taking big things and making them small, and they were really good at this, on everything that they did. Televisions, stereo systems, taking electronics and making them small. They kind of fell apart a bit when they moved out of that industry and moved into other things, but Sony is really still famous for microelectronics. Walmart. Love them or hate them, they're very good for one-stop shopping. You know, if you are in a hurry, you can go to Walmart and you can buy dog food, a rake, paper towels, some garden supplies, a pair of shoes for school tomorrow, and a birthday card. And there are really not many places you can do that. So they know that that is their core competency. That is what makes them successful. They don't have a lot of choices, but you know when you go to Walmart, you can buy it all in one stop. So a lot of companies over the years have outsourced their distribution or logistics, the shipping. They outsource it to somebody else. Target, we call it Target in our household because it sounds a little more posh. They are not in this sphere. This is not their core competency. So they said, you know, we don't have everything on the shelves. We're going to let somebody else do our distribution for us. Walmart said, this is our essence right now. We cannot outsource our core competency. They own their own trucks, and they are in charge of their own shipping to make sure that there's always stuff on the shelves. McDonald's, another one, love to hate them. They make 9 million pounds of French fries a day, all around the world. And if you go to McDonald's anywhere in the world, the French fry will look the same. It may be slightly seasoned differently, but they will look the same because of their standardization. That is their core competency. So each one of these is different, but they all are unique based on the history of the company, the founder, and their successes. Now, what are your core competencies? All of you will have core competencies. People have core competencies just like businesses do. So it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be all of those. When I was younger, I love horses. I really wanted to be a jockey. I really did. And so I was 5'2" up till 12, and I thought, I have a shot, I have a shot. I grew to 5'10", and that was it. My ability to be a jockey just flew out the window because physically I was unable to. I also have a terrible sense of balance, so I wouldn't have lasted very long. But as much as I wanted to do this for a living, physically, I was not able to do that. So there is a physical element on some of these. There's a lot of emotional and mental, and if you look at elite athletes, they have to have all of those to be an elite athlete. You can't just have one of them. You should look for careers that showcase your core competencies. I'll give you an example. I am wildly dyslexic and ADHD. I could not be an accountant because I don't have that level of detail for numbers. I know that about me. I find people, I work with great colleagues who are great at that. I know that's not me. That's not my strength. And looking at my career, I've had 4 careers, and 3 of them all played to my core competencies, and the one that I really, really wanted to be great at did not, and that was being an entrepreneur. And I did it. I owned a business. I sold the business, and I was really not good at it. It did not play to my core competencies, and I know that now. I didn't know it at the time. So it is amazing how many freshmen come to me. I taught a Dell class last year. Probably a quarter of the class were pre-meds. And I would say to them, you really want to be a physician. I want to go to med school. I want to go to med school. Why do you want to go to med school? Because my parents want me to go to med school. That's not a core competency. It's an aspiring core competency. That's not you. That's someone else trying to drive your core competency. You have to really live it. So the question becomes, will your core competencies survive the test of time? And my core competencies now are the same as they were 30 years ago. I didn't realize that at the time, but they are. And if they change over time, they're not core competencies. And the other thing is, are they aspirational? Again, it's a good thing to want to do better at the things that you are weaker at, and it's a good thing to really push and exploit the things that you are good at. But if your parent or your friend or your sibling tells you that they really want you to do this, it's not the same. You have to live it yourself. And it should influence what your major is, what your career choices are, and what your employers are, your employee choices, because it should all be consistent. If it's not consistent, you're going to be pretty miserable, and if you're miserable, you're not going to be successful. So I would say to you, be honest, know yourself, and to quote Hamlet, this above all, to thine own self be true. This is not trying to impress somebody else. This is not you, trying to live someone else's dream. This is you sitting there in the middle of the night saying, what am I really, really good at? And everybody's good at something. And some of them may be weird, but there's an application for some of them that are a little strange. I discovered quite late in life that I am extremely freakishly good at getting people to do stuff that they don't necessarily want to do. And I'm really glad I didn't know that when I was 17 years old, because I could have got a lot of us in trouble. But it's a good thing to know as an adult that that's something that I'm actually pretty good at doing. But that took me a long time to figure that out. But I never thought about it like this. So figure out what you're good at now, and you'll save yourself a lot of hassle later on in life. So related to this, and this is highly related, is your personal brand. And people are starting to use this term a lot, personal brand, you know, and I'm going to go back into brands a little bit and put it in a business context and then come back to it. It's related to your core competencies. So if you take the David Ogilvy of Ogilvy and Mather, the really famous advertising agency, he quotes a brand as being an intangible sum of the product's attributes. Again, it's one of these, people make these quotes that you can say it a lot easier. Marty Neumeier, who is a brand guru, said, it's a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And I love that. You look at a brand and it creates an emotion in you. And you may not, you may have to think about what it is, but it does create an emotion or a visceral reaction. And the world's most valuable brands are literally worth billions of dollars. On a balance sheet, the brand is listed with a value. So this is your question for the evening. Your first factoid. How many brands can the average 4-year-old recognize? How many do you think? 5, 10, 20? 100. 100 brands. We have polluted the minds of children, so by the age of 4, they know what a brand is. They know what SpongeBob is. So when I moved to the United States, my kids did not watch TV in England. And when we moved here, my kids had no idea who SpongeBob was. And they were kind of banished in little kid school because they had no idea who SpongeBob was. But what's also worrying is these kids also associate quality with it. So marketers, and I have a marketing degree, so I can't really talk about them like they're thems. I'm one of them. They have been able to pollute small minds with ideas and creating an image, true or not, based on advertising. And so brands are some of the most valuable assets a business can have. And just to give you an idea, these are some of the world's most valuable brands. Amazon, and this was taken at a snapshot this spring, this number will have changed. I know that Tencent, which is a Chinese conglomerate, it's owned by the Mitsubishi Keiretsu in Japan largely, but their value now has gone up to $165 billion as of this morning. What's interesting on this, other than a couple of them like McDonald's, AT&T, and Visa, they're all new. All of these are new. None of them are 25 years old. So it's amazing how something can go from zero value to $300 billion of value in 25 years. And if you look at the 100 most valuable brands in the world, they come from 15 different countries, and 15 of them are Chinese, which makes sense because it's one of the world's largest, most populous countries. And it includes brands like Louis Vuitton, Hermès, Chanel, BMW, SAP, Mercedes, Samsung, Vodafone, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Group in Hong Kong, which actually is one of the note printing banks in Hong Kong, Gucci, of course, Tata in India, NTT, which is the Japanese telecommunications company, Zara in Spain, IKEA, and even one from Indonesia, which is BCA Bank. There you go. Orange from the Netherlands, too, is another one. So from all over the world. Now, what's really interesting with brands is you get a drawing called a logo attached to the brand. And I picked 10 of them here because they have no words. There's nothing here to identify these brands, but I bet you know just about every one of them. And that is the sign of a really powerful brand, is when you can see your little prancing horse in the corner and know that there's a Ferrari behind that, or know that there's an Apple computer in the middle. And again, I picked ones, older ones, newer ones, just to get across industries. The one that is my personal favorite on this, and just to show you how much thought goes into branding and logos, is the Olympic rings in the corner. So this logo was developed before the, I want to say, 1932 Olympics, and it was designed to be in 5 interconnected rings to represent the 5 continents that sent teams to the Olympics. Antarctica doesn't send a team. And each ring, they're all interconnected, and each ring is a different color. The colors represent at least one of the colors in every flag of a country that attended that Olympics. So if you are from the United States, you'd see the red or the blue. If you are from Germany, well, okay, Germany's changed at the time, but even modern Germany, you'd see the black. So you could find Brazil, you see the green. For your every country going to the Olympics, you have a color in your flag in those rings. That is a really clever logo. That is just fundamentally clever. And not all of them have that amount of thought that goes into them, but all of them create and evoke an emotion and represent the brand. Oops. So people will also evoke the same reactions as a brand. You have a personal brand. And originally when I was doing this, I was thinking, I want to put someone on the screen who really evokes an emotional reaction, one way or the other. You either love them or you hate them. And I was thinking, who could I put up on the screen that could do that, where people really, no one's sitting on the fence about this person. So I picked Tom Brady. So for me, I think Tom Brady's a cheater. Deflategate. Don't get me wrong. The guy's he's a great quarterback. He doesn't need to cheat because he's really good. But I think of him as a cheater. My best friend, who was a Baltimore Colts fan with me when we were growing up, which was bad because they were 0-16 most of the time, she moved to Boston. And darn it, didn't she become a Tom Brady fan? She thinks he's the greatest guy alive. And I would say, how could you think that? He is just so divisive to me. Personal brands have those reactions with people. Now, hopefully we don't have those kind of split, polarizing reactions when people meet us. But you have to work on your personal brand and what it stands for in order to make sure it's consistent with what you want people to see it as being. Now, the other thing is, your brand can change over time. People don't necessarily look at your brand now the same way as they did 20 years ago. Now, I'm not sure, I knew the people my age would think this is funny. Do you guys even know, does anyone who's a student know who this is? Does anyone recognize him? This is O.J. Simpson. So O.J. Simpson is 73 now, which also stuns me. He's now out of prison. In your lifetime, he is a person who is convicted of kidnapping, armed robbery, and was convicted in a civil court for the murder of his ex-wife and her friend. In my lifetime, when I was growing up, he was a hero. He went to USC, he had broken the world record in track and field, he was the best running back in the history of the NFL, he was handsome, he was articulate, he was a nice boy. I mean, they even had a Hertz ad with him running through an airport going, "Go, OJ, go," trying to get to his rental car. And now the man is legitimately and rightfully a pariah. So his brand changed. Interestingly, when Michael Phelps, after the last Olympics as a swimmer, Michael Phelps is obviously a swimming icon. He was representing quite a few companies, and then he got caught for a DUI. And people dropped him because his personal brand didn't represent the company brand that he was supposed to be representing and tied to. So you have to be really careful with your personal brand if you're a company, but you should also be really careful about your personal brand as a human being, because it's really hard to get people to change their view of your brand unless you do something like this. So an example that I think is really, really powerful and interesting is this Colin Kaepernick ad that Nike ran a couple years ago. And the line across his nose says, "Believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything." How powerful is this? And what an incredible image to have for a person who did just that. Sacrificed everything he had because he believed in a cause. And he happened to be a Nike-sponsored athlete. So again, like him or not like him, this evokes a reaction. And in PR, all PR is good PR. So Nike got 171,000 new Instagram follower likes off of this, 2.7 million mentions in social media, 1,400% increase. They had a 135% increase in digital media traffic, and they earned $163 million in earned media. That means that if they had had to buy the space that they got off of this, it would have cost them $165 million. Their brand jumped $6 billion, $6 billion with a B dollars, and sales jumped by 30%. How flippin' clever is that on Nike's part? They are a branding company. They are not a clothing company, they're a branding company. So I want you to think about your personal brand, and I don't know if you can read these. I tried to make them big enough that you could read them. There are a few in there that I did not know what they mean. Felicific, it means that you want to make people happy. That was one I had to look up. Protean means that you are kind of a shepherd, a shepherding kind of herding person. I want you to think of words that describe you as a person, your brand. And, you know, when you go through this, and again, people in this room, you're going to pick out 20 of these. And what you have to do is pick out 20, cut them to 10, pick out, you know, look at the 10, cut them to 5. Try to come up with between 3 and 5. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard. But that's you. Think of what you want to be your brand and what is your brand. Okay? So don't pick ones. If I was picking one, you know, I'm trying to pick one here that's me, that I'm really good with, you know, really good with, I'm trying to find one that is really punctual. Yeah, punctual is not one of mine. You know, don't pick ones that aren't you. Don't pick aspiring one. Pick ones that are you. And work from there, because again, this is not about what you want. It's about aspiring. It's about what you are. So pick 3 what your brand should stand for, and this should really influence just about every major decision in your life, because your brand probably is related to your core competencies, and those don't change over time. And even if your career changes, your brand should not. And I look at my 3 careers that I did that successfully. So I was a TV sports producer, best job ever. I've been a management consultant and an academic. They all involved my 3 personal brand. This is before I even knew I had a personal brand, but they all involved my personal brand characteristics and my core competencies. They all had the same characteristics. You will do it the same. And if you don't, you're going to end up muddying your brand. And if you muddy your brand, people start to, you become less focused to other people and less clear about what you really stand for. So you really should not pursue personal activities that are in conflict with your brand. And that includes employers. If you are a really moral person, don't go work for a company that's a little shady on terms of how they pay bonuses. All it's going to do is upset you, and you're not going to succeed, and you're not going to excel. So it really should be genuine, consistent. You'll be much, much happier, and it should be consistent with them. And you live it every day as part of your brand, or you're going to wake up at night worrying about stuff. So the last point I'm going to talk about is your board of directors. And I know it may sound strange to think that you all have a board of directors, but you do. It changes. I've added new board members since I've come to the University of Lynchburg that I didn't know before I got here, and I've kept some old board members. The chairman of my board is a man named Sir Roger Carr, and he would just think this is hysterical that I've never told him this. But if he heard me doing this, he's now the chairman of British Aerospace. He has had an incredible career, but when I met him, he was running a fairly small company that I happened to do my doctoral research in. And we just hit it off, and we stayed friends for 25, 30 years. He served as one of my referees for this job. So if you look at organizations, every organization has a board of directors. We have a board of trustees. It's the same concept. And what you find is people, and for the students out there, you will have certain professors or coaches or mentors that you kind of hit it off with. And it's kind of a personal thing. You may have more in common with this person, but for some reason you share the same sense of humor with this person, and you're kind of drawn to them. You have an affinity. And whether you realize or not, they're probably sitting on your board of directors. You go to ask them questions about stuff. So if you probably talk to your professors for the students and your advisors about courses and academic options. Nico, I talk to you about, everything, or you talk to me about everything. So you'll go talk to Scott and Bev and Kara about if you have career options or you want to get an internship. You'll talk to your roommate about your love life. You'll talk to your siblings about just about everything. You'll talk to your teammates and coaches about athletic performance, probably other stuff as well, because it's all related. And you'll talk to your friends about the meaning of life at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep, and hopefully about all the other stuff. And I would ask that you talk to your parents about something. It doesn't matter what it is, but just talk to your parents, because you'll really, as a parent of college-age kids, you'll make them really happy if you just don't forget about them. That's just my mother talking at you. So what I'm suggesting is be more deliberate about choosing your board of directors. And I'm not saying go, see someone on a YouTube channel and say, hey, I want to be, I want you to mentor me. It's got to be a mutual kind of clicking of personalities. So go out and find people and cultivate them who can help you. The beauty about being a student in this environment is you are surrounded by literally hundreds of people who are here for your success. So there are hundreds of people all around the campus that are here to make you do the best you can do for the rest of your life. So use that, be intentional, find people who can help you and ask for the help. But there's some caveats with that. There needs to be some kind of connection, and it takes time to cultivate those relationships. So if you're a senior, kind of get on it now. And the other thing is you should also sit on other people's boards of directors. It's not a one-way street. And I kind of joke with Nico, if I have a question or need something done on a student idea, I'll text Nico and say, we had our accreditors in this couple weeks ago, and we were putting together our group of students to talk to them, and I'm looking at students here who first people that come to my mind is, I know I can count on these students to represent us well. And I pay back. And that's what you do when you sit on other people's boards of directors, you pay back. When Sir Roger was looking at changing jobs years ago, he said, I need to ask you a question. And Roger is like the coolest guy ever. I'm like, how does he need my advice on anything? And he said, I'm thinking about doing this job. What do you think? And I'm like, wow, I get a chance to pay him back for all the years that he has supported me when I've come to him and said, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should do that? And it was really nice. It was really nice to be able to pay back. So you need to do that for each other, or eventually people will stop sitting on your board. So what makes an effective board of directors? You need to have different people. You cannot have everybody being the same. You want to have different genders, you want to have different life experiences, different ages, different educational backgrounds, and really different geographies, different experiences. The more vibrant the mix of experiences, the better advice you're going to get, because if you don't, you end up with something called groupthink. If you put, and this is when I teach my ethics class, we have a whole day where I get to rant about boards of directors. If you are a company and you put a bunch of old white men, and I'm sorry to pick on the white guys here, but if you put a bunch of old white men on a board together that have all run big companies, they're all going to think the same way because they've all had a lot of the same experiences. You want to have men, you want to have women, you want to have people from all over the world, you want to have people that speak different languages, that have lived in other countries, from different backgrounds, who look different, have different ethnicities, different races, because you're going to get a much better viewpoint on the world because everyone looks at the world differently with different experiences. Again, different core competencies. So pick your board and try to have your board have some spice of life in it. And don't have too big of a board. You have to manage your board. So what I found is when the pandemic happened, I went through and I emailed or texted all of my friends who are kind of in my wider board, make sure they're okay. Just touch base with them. How are you doing? Are you okay? My friends in India. I have friends in England. I have friends in my family in Netherlands. I have a friend in Australia. I kind of had to make sure they're all okay. It takes time to look after your board. And you should look after your board. They're going to look after you. So between 8 and 12 people is about right. And if you properly manage your board, you can actually sustain the life of the board for a long time. Roger Carr has been on my board for 25 years. He really has, and he will be on my board till he doesn't want to do this anymore. So what I don't do is bug him about little stuff, because his time is really valuable. Every time I go to England, I go see him. I'll go see him, we'll go out to lunch, I'll just stop in for tea. Sometimes, this past time, it was an hour. Not for long, just touch base, how are you? I send him a Christmas card. When his daughter, does something and is in the news, I'll text him or email him, say, hey, I saw Caroline was in the news. Things like that. But I don't bug him about little stuff. And so what you do is you have kind of subcommittees. What you'll have is organizations, big companies don't have all the boards sitting on all the different committees, they break them down. So they have a finance committee, they have a hiring committee, they will have potentially, in your case, you may have a social committee. So I'm not going to talk to Roger about my social committee. That's someone else's impact. I'm not going to talk to my social committee necessarily about the meaning of life in my career. So you can differentiate and kind of subdivide a little on that, and it makes better use of their time. And the more busy or successful your board members, and you do want successful people on your board, not just successful people on your board, but you do want successful people on your board who have had more life experiences potentially. Don't talk to them about irrelevant stuff. Save their input for the big decisions. And make sure that you reciprocate. So I got divorced, I want to say probably 12 years ago, and I relied very heavily on two friends. And one of them has since passed away, but she was an amazing woman who was head of my social committee on my board. And I had another friend, and who, again, relied on incredibly heavily and was an amazing friend for me during that time. She got divorced a couple years ago, and I made sure I was there for her. Even when it wasn't really convenient, I made sure I was there for her because she was there for me. That's what being on someone's board is all about. It's about reciprocating and making sure that it's not a one-way street. So in wrapping up, I would say your career choices should really be consistent with your personal brand and your core competency. Just because it sounds good to go do this crazy job with this crazy cool company, if it doesn't match with what you feel is right for you, don't do it. I have students all the time say, I want to go work for this company. I'm like, it's not right for you. They're not right for you. And most of the time they go and do it anyway, and it lasts about a year or two, and then they're like, yeah, I was miserable. So you can get hired by a company that doesn't fit your brand or core competencies, but you're going to be pretty miserable during that time. And I really have not seen many people have wildly successful careers in businesses that do not complement their core competencies or their brand. And you will be miserable trying if you find yourself in this boat. And it doesn't mean admitting defeat in areas where you are deficient. I know punctuality is a problem for me. I got it, I understand. I am the first to admit it. So I know that's something I need to work on. And I try to work on that all the time. But what I do try to do also is capitalize on my strengths. What am I good at doing? I'm good at mobilizing a team. I'm good at getting the team enthusiastic. I'm good at being creative and seeing big picture ideas and getting other people to contribute big picture ideas. So I pick jobs that help me do that and play to those strengths. Management consultant, academic, TV producer, all of those things were related to those. Entrepreneur, did not. And I was pretty darn unhappy being an entrepreneur. Even when I was successful at it, I wasn't happy. So you need to make sure that you think about this and figure out a career that helps you exploit those kind of strengths while you're working at the stuff that you should be better at anyway. And find a team of mentors who you trust and who care about your success, and use that resource wisely. And what I will say, provide that resource for other people too, and that will help prolong that relationship. So that is me. I am done. If anyone has any questions. All 20 of you. Not like it's pressure on you or anything. Yeah, go.
I guess I have a question about vocabulary.
Yes.
Two things, actually. So could you say the difference between core competency and talent or value? And the other is the difference between the board of directors and a stakeholder.
Okay, very good.
similar also.
Very good. Okay, so talent, people have a lot of talent, and I'll give you an example of one that again, using a sports analogy. Everybody knows that kid who is the really talented athlete, but they don't have the mental toughness, the resilience, the trainability, all the other characteristics that go into making an elite athlete. And talent is never enough. It's just, so core competency is really a complicated, almost unique combination of talents, experience. You know, everybody, there are so many examples of people who may have been really good athletes. I had a friend would have been a really good distance athlete because his standing pulse was 40, but he didn't like sports. So although he had that innate potential talent, it was never an experience that he had as a kid, so he never got to exploit it. So it's core competencies is just a crazy, unique combination of talent, mentality, emotional qualities, discipline, but put into this melting pot of experience. Again, it's amazing. Another friend who was a world champion master swimmer won probably 20 titles in world master swimming. Never swam as a kid. And boy, if he had swum as a kid, he probably would have been really, really, really good, but he didn't. So he was a good master swimmer, but he wasn't an Olympian because he didn't have that experience as a kid. So that's different. Stakeholders, and these are really good because they're different but related. A stakeholder can be anyone who is different as even a competitor. Randolph College is a stakeholder to the University of Lynchburg because what we do influences them and they influence us. However, they're not on our board of directors. Being on someone's board is a much more intimate relationship. And there's a degree of vulnerability of sitting on someone's board and vice versa, because the person can turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do this for you, or why are you bothering me? And also vice versa. So they both have to be totally bought into your success. You have to be bought into your success, and they have to be bought into your success, so that they're not going to gloss over answers and tell you stuff you don't want to hear. And my husband is Dutch and is brutally honest, and I will ask him stuff, and boy, he doesn't sugarcoat it. But I know that when he gives me an answer, it's absolutely in my best interest. And a stakeholder won't necessarily do that, and stakeholders sometimes have agendas because they're going to put themselves first. Your board of directors is there for your success. Does that make sense? Yes.
So this is kind of related to his question, trying to get to the mic. I'm trying to figure out the steps on how to figure out what you're good at. How much would Myers-Briggs and Gallup strengths test, and there's another one, the Viva Institute strengths, tie into that?
Yep, and DISC analysis, all of that. Great question. I kind of do a Myers-Briggs about every 5 years, and I'm a chameleon, and it's almost like I can manipulate the test to what I want to hear it say. A DISC test, and some of the others are a little better at that, but I personally find personality tests will give you some themes, but I think it depends on how you feel, how optimistic you're feeling, how tired you are, if you've had a really bad couple weeks, if you're stressed at work, if you're having, outside influences will all influence your personality test. And people, and your job will as well, because if you're being asked to do certain things in your job all the time, whether you're good at it or not, that's going to show up on your personality test more. And also I find personality tests are aspirational, that people will say, I always thought of myself as a raging extrovert because I can turn on the extroversion thing for a period of time and then I have to go sulk in a corner and kind of recharge my batteries. But I always thought of myself as a really kind of party extrovert until I actually was told by one of my board members that I was really a loner and I'm really an introvert. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then I thought about it, I thought, yeah, I am. I am really happy sitting in a corner with a book. And probably more happy sitting in a corner with a book. So, but if I do a Myers-Briggs, it comes out I'm this wild extrovert because that's how I see myself. And it's really hard to divorce your image of yourself with what you really are. And a core competency is you have to figure out what you're really good at. And it can be different, and your personality will play into that, but not necessarily dictate it. So I also think personality tests will kind of give you hints at things, but because they change over time and because they're really mood-related and experience-related, I would say it's not going to give you your core competency. Your core competency isn't going to change no matter if you're happy, sad, tired, in a job you hate, worried about this, worried about, your core competency will stay the same. And it should be the same over your entire life. Nico, come on, you have a question. I have to pick on poor Nico. Okay, well, I love doing this. It was really fun. I felt almost normal in crazy, crazy times. So thank you for listening. And I guess I go back to being back to the way things are now. So.
And we will present Nancy with a plaque, which is a framed version and the certificate for this lecture.
So excited.
As well as a basket of University of Lynchburg goodies. So thank you.
Bling.
again.
I love bling. I will do anything for bling. Okay, back to the real.